From MOCs to willow pumps, RVUs to blowouts. If you know exactly what I'm talking about, you're probably a physician mom, and this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome to Stethoscopes and Strollers. I'm Dr. Toya, an OBGYN and coach, and like you, I'm juggling life in scrubs with tantrums and timeouts. Here we get each other on a level no one else can. Conversations will be real and 100% unfiltered, so you might choose to listen while you're alone, or at least put in your AirPods. It's time to feel understood, supported, and a little less alone. Let's get into it. Breastfeeding helps you lose weight. Breastfeeding protects you from postpartum depression. Breastfeeding comes naturally. Your body was meant to do this. Breastfeeding is not supposed to hurt if done correctly. Breastfeeding is cheaper than formula feeding. Lies. All lies. Okay, maybe they're not lies, but they are statements that really do a disservice to many moms, and particularly many physician moms. So I just want to give my disclaimer. I am not anti-breastfeeding. I breastfed my son for 22 months, okay? I breastfed my daughter for 8 months. And it's because of those two experiences that I feel this way. But quite honestly, I was always a fed is best girl because I'm an OB first, right? I care about mom. I care about my patients. I care about that birthing person. And the pressure and stress of breastfeeding is often overlooked. And I never want to make someone feel bad just because they cannot or are not willing to do something, even if I know and I believe that it is the best thing for them and for their babies. But once I went through this second postpartum experience, I was even more fed as best because I really felt how detrimental it was to my mental health trying to meet my breastfeeding goal. So I really want to talk about this and bring some awareness to it and take it from two different perspectives, because you may be listening as a mom who may or may not have had breastfeeding challenges, but you may be listening as a physician who takes care of lactating people. And I think having this different perspective can really help give better care and more sensitive and patient-centered care. Because one thing that I hear from many physician moms is that the people that make them feel the worst about their breastfeeding and breastfeeding journey are other healthcare professionals. They're pediatrician, lactation consultants. Well, lactation consultants make everybody feel bad. No shade to anybody who's listening, but that's just the truth. And I really think that this is a huge area for us to improve in general with how we deal with people who choose to breastfeed. Okay, so in the beginning, there was some pain, which was expected. And that's when I realized there was the first lie that breastfeeding doesn't hurt. There was nothing wrong with my latch. There was nothing wrong at all. It just hurt until it didn't. And I meant to get to a year. He said, nope, I'm continuing to go. And I didn't care enough to really make a true effort to wean. He ended up weaning on his own at 22 months, and we were both happy with that. The second time around, it was very stressful for me. And it's only when I went back to do my research for my postpartum story episode that I realized how soon after having my daughter I wanted to stop. In my mind, I had made it to like 5-6 months and was like, yeah, okay, this is tough. I want to stop. But within weeks of her being born, I told my friend P, I was like, yeah, I want to give her formula. And even though she's a pediatrician, she fully supported me, and I will be ever grateful to her for that. She didn't make me feel bad or anything like that, which is, from what I gather, a rare thing, because pediatricians tend to be baby-centered, as they should be. But with a mom and baby, you really have to consider the mom, right? And what she is going through. So my biggest thing was keeping up with her demand. I never had true supply issues. I can't even imagine if I really did, but it was bad enough where I had to be so careful about my food intake, about my water intake, about not missing pumps, about not missing feeds, trying to figure out which side. And it wasn't like that with my son. So that comparison between the two was also stressful, right? Because I was like, it wasn't this hard before. Why is it this hard now? And it just felt like my entire world was being ruled by this one thing that hurt. Because just like with the first, it hurt in the beginning, but it was a lot more painful than I remember. And the difference was that with my son, my anatomy changed, my boobs got huge, and they never really went back down. But then with the second pregnancy, my breast got even bigger, and so did my nipples. So there was no amount of latch, nipple shield, lactation consultants that could have made her mouth big enough for it to not hurt until she grew. And I think that in the combination of trying to figure out that she needed both sides, and then later on how tenuous the supply was just too much for me to handle. And I kept pushing because my goal was a year. I actually didn't want to go past a year, but I knew I wanted to at least get to a year. And it affected my sleep because I could not miss my nighttime pump. You know, my daughter slept through the night pretty early on. And when she stopped dream feeding, I had to stay up and pump or else my supply would tank. So I was already having sleep issues, which I'll talk about on a different episode. Now I can't even try to get to sleep early because my supply will tank. And it came to a point where I had to convince myself that it was okay for me to stop because of the anxiety that it provoked, because of just how it made me feel. Like I couldn't wear what I wanted. I couldn't go where I wanted without all of this stuff. I had like 5 pumps. It was just a lot. So, as you can tell, it was a very traumatic experience for me. So, whenever I hear that statistic about how breastfeeding protects you from postpartum depression, I'm like, okay, that's not everybody. And I know a lot of physician moms who feel the same way and say that it was a direct link to their postpartum depression, the pressure of breastfeeding. Right? So that's like the first lie. The breastfeeding helps you lose weight was another lie. I didn't have issues with this pregnancy, but with my first, I gained weight breastfeeding. I was heavier 6 months postpartum than I was right after I had my son. You hear me? I was heavier 6 months postpartum than immediately postpartum because of breastfeeding, because I did not expect how ravenous I would be. So we need to stop telling people that. I feel like one of the most damaging lies is this idea that your body was meant to do it. It comes naturally. Because when you believe that, when you are socialized to think that this is correct and it does not work out or it is difficult, then the immediate thought is, well, there is something wrong with me. And the truth is, no, it doesn't come naturally to everyone, not to the mom or the baby. So I get why people say that because it can be encouraging, but in any context, it can be a very harmful statement. And we should really just stop saying that. And on the surface, breastfeeding may seem cheaper than using formula. But when you think about the opportunity costs of breastfeeding, the extra time off of work where you're not making money, all of the accoutrement that comes along with successfully breastfeeding for 1 year, which is the goal of the majority of physician moms. You need to buy pump supplies because most of us are going back to work. You have to replace that stuff frequently. We have to have wearable pumps because we're in the hospital, we're seeing patients. All of these things just add up. And like I said, I had 5 pumps and they were all used for different situations, different places in my house, for my locums work. One was for the car. And so, sure, I didn't need to spend all of that money, but it was necessary for me at the time to maintain my supply to meet my breastfeeding goal. So while the cost may be less for a different person, in general, it takes a lot of money to consistently breastfeed exclusively for 6 months and then to continue on for a year. So yes, we tell lots of lies when it comes to breastfeeding, and I would like us to stop doing that. So if you have been a victim of one of these lies, I hope this has made you feel a little bit better. Or if you have breastfed or are currently breastfeeding and have been having the best time ever and have no idea what I'm talking about, that is wonderful for you. I have very complex emotions when it comes to breastfeeding. I actually loved it when it was great. Every time I see a breastfeeding mom, it warms my heart. It is like the cutest little thing. One of my clients breastfeeds every single session, and we've been working together for like the last 6 months. That the bond is so special. It is a part of my motherhood journey that I truly treasure, but it is also a part of my motherhood journey that was truly traumatic. And those things can be true at the same time. So I really hope that if you had no idea about any of this, that this gives you a new perspective and can help with any future interactions with another lactating person who may or may not be having the best time, and just being a little bit more understanding about what they're going through. So please share this with another breastfeeding mom. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leave a 5-star rating on all other podcast platforms. Share, follow, and come back next time for another episode of Stethoscopes and Strollers. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you feel a little more seen and a lot less alone. If you love what you heard, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and drop us a 5-star review. They really make a big difference, and it helps other physician moms find us too. And share this episode with your friends. It's all about spreading the support and keeping the conversation going. See you on the next episode of Stethoscopes and Strollers.